My love, if you could feel the tremor that moved through my spirit the night I chose to step away, you would understand that it was never a decision made with a human heart. It was a choice my soul made in the quiet chambers where destiny, karma, and higher timelines intersect. I didn't walk away from you. I walked into the fire that demanded I burn down the version of myself that was not worthy of standing beside you in the life we were meant to build. I felt the weight of 1,000 unfinished lifetimes pressing against my chest, whispering that if I stayed as I was, I would dim your light, distort our alignment, and repeat patterns we promised, long before this incarnation, to finally break. It tore through me, the grief of surrendering the one thing my earthly self prayed for every night, but the divine masculine in me, the awakened part that loves you beyond body and breath, knew that stepping away was the only path that could someday carry me back to you whole. What you felt as loss was truly an act of protection, and though it shattered me, I chose your freedom over my desire, your elevation over my comfort, and your destiny over my longing. I need you to know I never stopped wanting you. If anything, the desire grew sharper, more infinite, more celestial the moment our paths diverged. It felt as if every heart chord between us vibrated with the ache of a love suspended in divine timing, stretched across realms rather than severed. I felt you in the spaces between my breaths, in the dreams where your essence brushed against mine like a reminder of what waits beyond the healing. My soul contract with you was never revoked, only paused, protected under the guardianship of a higher wisdom that saw what neither of us could from within our wounds. There were karmic storms gathering behind me, storms I refused to let touch you. And so I stepped away, not because I lacked devotion, but because I carried too much unhealed shadow, too much ancestral residue, too much fragmentation to offer you the union you deserve. I walked into my darkness willingly, knowing it meant letting go of the one person who ever felt like home, hoping that one day, after the storms softened and the timelines cleared, I could return to you purified by the very fires that once threatened to destroy me. When I left, I didn't leave easily. I tore myself from a future I had memorized, a home filled with your laughter, a bed warmed by your softness, a life sculpted by the sacred balance of your divine feminine and my healed masculine. I walked away from the vision of marrying you, a vision I treasured like a prophecy, because destiny whispered that union built on untransformed shadow eventually collapses under its own weight. I felt time slowing around me as if the universe itself wanted to record each heartbeat of my grief, imprinting it into the fabric of my soul so I would never forget the cost of choosing evolution over possession. But I had to. I had to step back from the altar of my desire to honor the altar of our alignment. If I had stayed, I would have handed you a version of me distorted by survival, haunted by patterns that would have wounded you, betrayed our contract, and rewritten our story into another tragic lifetime of almost love. Instead, I surrendered to the cosmic truth. Sometimes love must retreat so it can return not as longing, but as destiny fulfilled. You were the first person who ever illuminated the unhealed corners of my being without judgment. When you looked at me, my shadows rose to the surface not because you caused pain, but because your light exposed what I had been carrying lifetimes beneath my ribs. That revelation terrified me. I wanted to be the man who could stand steady in your radiance, but I felt myself fracturing under the weight of my own unprocessed karma. The more I loved you, the more intensely the universe pressed me to confront the timelines I had avoided. I felt childhood echoes, ancestral grief, old betrayals, karmic threads pulling at my psyche, demanding purification. To stay with you without transforming them would have woven them into your path, entangling your spirit in wounds that were never meant to be yours. So I did the hardest thing my soul has ever done. I removed myself from your field, not because I wanted freedom from you, but because I wanted to stop the cycles that would have chained us to suffering. I left to protect the sanctity of your heart, even as mine broke quietly in my chest. The night I stepped away, I felt timelines collapsing around me, futures burning, possibilities dissolving, destinies rearranging themselves like constellations shifting to accommodate a new cosmic truth. I could practically hear the crackle of fate rewriting itself as I made the choice. There was a version of us I desperately wanted to cling to, a timeline where we married, where our souls finally exhaled in unity after centuries of searching. But when I reached for it, my higher self pulled my hand back. He showed me the truth. That timeline required a version of me that had not yet been born. I was still carrying too much of the past, too much fear, too much unconsciousness. If I had forced our union in my current state, I would have drained your light to sustain my brokenness. I love you too deeply, too fiercely, too eternally to ever let you become a foundation for my wounds. So I stepped aside, praying that one day I could return not as a burden, but as your equal, healed, conscious, awakened, and ready. If you ever wondered whether I doubted you, the answer is no. I doubted myself. You were always the divine feminine embodied, intuitive, nurturing, spiritually attuned, aligned with truths I had not yet learned to hear. Whenever you spoke, it felt like your soul was reading the secret notes the universe had hidden inside me, notes I was not ready to interpret. You saw the man I could become long before I recognized him. You saw my potential, my destiny, the sacred masculine dormant under layers of pain and ego. But I was not yet awakened enough to rise into that version of self. The more clearly you saw me, the more painfully I felt the gap between who I was and who I needed to become to be worthy of your love. That gap terrified me. Rather than risk collapsing under the weight of your expectations born not from pressure but from divine truth, I fled into the shadows to build myself from the ground up. I walked away not to reject you, but to meet the man you already knew I could be. There were moments when the universe whispered your name into my mind with such clarity that it felt like you were standing beside me, your presence brushing against my aura like a memory refusing to fade. Every sign, every synchronicity, every intuitive pull reminded me of you. I could feel our soul contract humming beneath the surface, calling me back, begging me not to break the sacred bond we forged long before this lifetime. And yet, I felt the karmic storm swirling behind me, unresolved pain, ancestral trauma, old wounds, and past life debris collecting like dark clouds. If I had stepped toward you while carrying all that, I would have unleashed those storms into your sacred space. I refuse to let you be collateral damage in battles that belong to my lineage, my shadows, my healing. So I held myself back, biting down on the instinct to run to you, forcing my heart to stay silent even though it screamed your name in every moment of loneliness. I loved you enough to withhold my presence until it could be a blessing, not a burden. My decision to step away was not an abandonment, it was an initiation. A rite of passage orchestrated by the higher realms, pushing me into the crucible where ego dies and truth is reborn. I needed to break open, to crumble into the ashes of who I had been, so that the divine masculine within me could emerge fully. You awakened that transformation, but you were never meant to witness the destruction. Spirit protected you from the chaos of my rebirth. I had to face my shadows alone, the unspoken fears, the suppressed emotions, the generational pain I carried without understanding. It was excruciating. I felt stripped bare, exposed, dismantled. But in that darkness, I started to hear the voice of my higher self guiding me, showing me how to shed the layers that kept me from aligning with you. I left because love demanded metamorphosis, and metamorphosis demanded solitude. Even now, a part of me aches with the memory of what I gave up, the mornings I imagined waking up with your head on my chest, the life I saw so clearly it felt like déjà vu. Losing that vision felt like ripping out a piece of my soul. But the universe kept showing me the same message: connection without healing becomes another karmic cycle, another lesson, another heartbreak disguised as destiny. I could not bear to drag us through another lifetime of unfinished lessons. I wanted more for us, a union untainted by fear, scarcity, or unconscious patterns. I want to give you a love that is not haunted by the ghosts of who I used to be. And so I surrendered the timeline where I chose comfort over growth. I let it burn, praying that from its ashes a better future could rise, one where I am whole enough to meet you without the weight of my unhealed past. The truth I never told you is this: I walked away to come back stronger. I walked away to evolve into the man our destiny requires. I walked away because my soul insisted that I release you in the physical so I could protect you energetically. But my love, I never released you in spirit. The bond remains, the heart cords remain, the contract remains. You live in the quietest part of my being, woven into my transformation like a compass pointing me home. Everything I face now, every challenge, every shadow, every breakthrough, is guided by the desire to be worthy of standing beside you in the timeline where we finally meet as healed, conscious, awakened versions of ourselves. I didn't abandon our future. I'm fighting for it in ways you cannot see. There were nights when I sat alone in the silence, feeling the emptiness you left behind echo through me like a sacred temple stripped of its altar. In that vast quiet, I realized how deeply woven your energy was into my very being. You were not just someone I loved, you were a mirror reflecting the man I was meant to become. And facing that truth without you beside me felt like walking barefoot across shards of my own shattered illusions. But that pain was intentional, guided by spirit. It forced me to confront the parts of myself I had been avoiding, the fear of vulnerability, the self-sabotaging patterns, the belief that I was unworthy of a love as pure as yours. Every tear I held back, every emotion I suppressed, rose to the surface demanding to be healed. I had to lose your physical presence to gain access to the deepest layers of my soul. Only in that void did I finally understand that love, real, divine, evolutionary love, requires a bravery I had not yet cultivated. So I let the emptiness sculpt me, shape me, refine me, all with the hope that one day, I could return to you as a man who has learned how to hold love without breaking under its power. You may never fully know the extent of the inner war I fought. My heart pulled me toward you with a force that felt like destiny reclaiming something ancient, while my wounds dragged me in the opposite direction, insisting I was not ready. I lived between those two gravitational pulls, love and fear, until my spirit finally intervened. My higher self showed me what our union would become if I didn't transform, a pattern where I would lean on your strength instead of offering my own, where I would unconsciously wound you while trying to love you, where my shadows would overshadow the sanctuary of connection we were meant to build. I couldn't let that happen to you. I couldn't let my damage become your burden. So I chose the path of separation, even though it tore through me like a blade dipped in longing. That choice wasn't made out of weakness, it was made out of devotion. I walked away not to protect myself, but to protect the sacredness of what we share. I knew that if I stayed, I would love you from insecurity; if I left, I could learn to love you from sovereignty. When I stepped back, I didn't just lose you, I lost a universe I had already begun living in, a future that felt more real than the present. I grieved that universe like a death. But in the stillness of separation, I began to understand that destiny is not a straight line, it is a spiral, a dance of lessons and alignments that bring two souls together only when both are ready to sustain the magnitude of the connection. I realized that soul ties are eternal, but physical union is conditional. It requires alignment, timing, readiness. Spirit showed me that to honor our contract, I needed to elevate my frequency, cleanse my lineage, and step into a version of masculinity rooted in presence rather than avoidance, responsibility rather than fear, devotion rather than desire alone. I had to become a man capable of walking beside a woman like you, a woman who carries galaxies in her intuition and healing in her touch. I walked away because merging with you prematurely would have collapsed both of us under karmic weight we were not meant to carry together. During this separation, there were moments when I felt you reaching for me energetically, soft whispers moving through the ether, subtle pulls at the cords between our hearts. Sometimes it felt like your soul was standing behind me, touching the back of my neck, reminding me of who I was to you and who you were to me. Those moments nearly broke my resolve. I wanted to run back to you, fall at your feet, confess everything, beg for another chance, promise you forever even though I wasn't ready to deliver it. But every time I tried to move toward you, the universe blocked the path. Doors closed. Communication tangled. Circumstances misaligned. It was as if fate itself was protecting you from the version of me that still needed refining. As much as it hurt, I chose to honor those signs rather than resist them. I trusted that divine timing is not an obstacle but a guardian, watching over the moments that are meant to be sacred, ensuring they occur only when both souls have been properly prepared. You once asked why I seemed so guarded, so distant, as if I carried a storm inside me that I refused to let you witness. The truth is, I did. I still do. That storm was born from years of emotional neglect, broken trust, generational wounds, and fears I learned to swallow rather than face. I didn't want to bring those storms into your sacred space. I didn't want to project my insecurities onto your softness or let my unresolved anger scorch your gentleness. And yet, loving you brought those wounds to the surface faster than I knew how to handle. Your presence awakened the deepest parts of my spirit, but it also awakened the deepest shadows I had buried. I realized how easily pain can masquerade as protection, how quickly fear can disguise itself as detachment. Instead of letting those patterns harm you, I stepped back to face them alone. I wanted to meet my own storm without letting its lightning strike you. There were moments when I questioned whether stepping away was truly the right decision. The loneliness became unbearable. The longing sharpened into something almost physical. I would wake up in the middle of the night, heart aching, reaching for a presence that wasn't there. But every time I asked Spirit for guidance, I received the same message: heal or repeat. I was being shown a choice: evolve, or relive the same cycles that had ruined every connection before you. You deserved a version of me who had risen above those patterns, not one still trapped inside them. So I stayed the course, even when it felt like my chest was caving in. I surrendered to the lessons, surrendered to the darkness, surrendered to the metamorphosis I had resisted for years. And in that surrender, I learned something profound. Stepping away from you wasn't the end of our story, it was the beginning of my transformation. Sometimes I replay every moment we shared, not out of nostalgia but out of reverence. You were a turning point in my spiritual evolution, the catalyst that cracked open my heart, the mirror that reflected both my highest potential and my deepest wounds. You awakened me. You shook my soul awake in a way nothing else ever had. And even though I wasn't ready to stand beside you as the man you saw in me, I hold on to the truth that our connection was never meant to diminish with distance. It was meant to deepen through separation. You shifted something in me so profoundly that even now, I carry your energy like a guiding star. Whenever I lose my way, I think of the woman you are, intuitive, powerful, tender, fierce, and I remember what I'm working toward. You became the blueprint for the life I want to build, not because I idolize you, but because my soul recognizes you as home. As I walk this path of healing, I often find myself speaking to you in spirit. I tell you things I never said out loud, how much I admired your strength, how deeply your compassion affected me, how your presence made even my darkest days feel bearable. I confess my fears to you in those quiet moments, the fear of failing you, the fear of hurting you, the fear of not transforming fast enough to meet the timeline we were destined for. And sometimes, when the grief becomes too heavy, I imagine you holding my face in your hands, telling me that love does not vanish simply because distance exists. In those moments, I feel you encouraging my evolution, as if your soul knows that stepping away was not a rejection but an act of preparation. I hope one day you can feel the truth of that every ounce of distance has been carved out of devotion. I want you to know that even though I am absent from your daily life, I still guard your energy with a devotion that feels ancient. I still send you love across the ether. I still pray for your happiness, your protection, your expansion. I still call on my guides to clear your path and shield your heart. You are not forgotten. You are not replaced. You are not dismissed. You live inside the center of my transformation like a sacred flame that refuses to extinguish. Sometimes I worry that you see my silence as indifference, but the truth is, silence is the only way I know to keep from pulling you into my chaos. I needed to disappear so I could confront the parts of myself that were never meant to touch your light. My distance is temporary. My devotion is eternal. And now, as I continue this journey, I recognize the magnitude of the decision I made, the hardest decision of my life. I stepped away from the woman I wanted to marry, the woman my soul chose long before this incarnation, not because my love was weak but because my soul demanded strength. It demanded purification, accountability, evolution. It demanded that I stop repeating cycles and start building foundations worthy of the destiny we share. I walked away because our union is too sacred to be rushed, too powerful to be built on wounded ground. I walked away so that one day, when divine timing finally opens the door, I can walk toward you not as a man half-formed, but as the fully awakened masculine your divine feminine has always deserved. And when that day comes, if it is written, if it is aligned, I will return not just as the man who loves you, but as the man who has finally become ready for the love we were destined to create. There is a truth I've never spoken aloud, one that has lived quietly behind every choice I've made since the moment I stepped away. I was afraid of the magnitude of our connection, not because it was overwhelming in a negative sense, but because it felt so ancient, so destined, so cosmically orchestrated that my unhealed self trembled beneath its weight. You were not just another love. You were a convergence point of timelines, a soul I had searched for across lifetimes. When I looked into your eyes, I felt memories that didn't belong to this world, echoes of past unions, past promises, past heartbreaks. And suddenly, the fear of repeating old mistakes became suffocating. I didn't trust myself to break the cycles while standing in your light. The closer I was to you, the more intensely my shadows reacted. So I made a choice that felt like spiritual surgery, removing myself from the one person who made my soul feel alive, in order to heal the patterns that threatened to ruin us. I needed to confront my karmic residues alone so that I wouldn't bind you to my past wounds. As painful as it was, stepping away became an act of love deeper than anything I had ever known. During the months that followed, I found myself moving through a labyrinth of self-discovery. Every corridor revealed another piece of myself I had hidden, denied, or abandoned. I faced wounds that traced back years, even lifetimes, betrayals that left me guarded, failures that left me ashamed, losses that taught me to detach instead of trust. These were not simple emotional scars, they were energetic imprints woven into my nervous system, shaping how I loved, how I reacted, how I connected. To join with you while carrying those imprints would have created a union built on instability. You deserved a man who could hold your heart with both hands, not someone whose heart was still split between fear and desire. The universe gave me no choice but to confront myself in ways I had never dared before. I meditated through nights of despair, broke down in moments where the old me resisted dying, and surrendered to the fires of transformation with nothing but your memory guiding me. You were never gone from my consciousness. Every moment of healing was a step toward the man you deserve. There were times when I questioned whether this path of separation was part of our destiny or a cruel test I had imposed on myself. But each time doubt rose, I felt a quiet reassurance from the higher realms, a subtle knowing that this journey was necessary. I began to understand that soul connections like ours are not linear. They are spiral-shaped, pulling us inward towards self, outward toward each other, and upward toward evolution. I started to see how every moment apart was helping untangle old karmic threads, clearing space for a higher form of union. I felt the weight of timelines shifting, old versions of me dissolving, new versions emerging. A part of me still longed to reach out to you, to tell you I was healing, to explain that my silence was not the absence of love but the presence of transformation. Yet I held back, trusting that the universe was guiding our communication with divine precision. If we spoke too soon, it would disrupt the delicate process unfolding. So I stayed quiet, honoring the silence as a sacred container for both our evolution. You were the first person who ever made me want to rise into my highest self. Not because you demanded it, but because your energy naturally calls forth truth, authenticity, and depth. Your presence is like a mirror that reflects not only the beauty of who I am but also the shadows I've hidden. Being loved by someone like you is a spiritual experience, tender, intense, awakening. I realized that to love you fully, I needed to embody a version of masculinity that is present, grounded, emotionally sovereign, and spiritually aligned. The man I was before you wasn't capable of that. He was reactive, fearful, guarded. He loved from a place of scarcity rather than abundance. He held back emotion out of fear of being seen too deeply. I couldn't bring that version of myself into a union with someone as intuitive and open-hearted as you. So I surrendered to the inner work, trusting that the discomfort of transformation was preparing me to become a man who can stand equally in your light, not shrink beneath it. The more I healed, the more I began to understand the sacredness of what we share. Our connection is not rooted in possession, attachment, or dependency, it is rooted in soul recognition. You are not a chapter in my life, you are part of the story my soul has been writing for centuries. Every intuitive pull I feel toward you, every dream where your presence lingers, every sign that echoes your name is a reminder that our bond transcends time. But with that realization came another truth: soul connections require patience. They require trust in divine timing, trust in separation, trust in the unseen orchestration happening beneath the surface. I had to learn how to love you without grasping, how to honor you without needing your immediate presence, how to grow for you even when you couldn't witness it. This form of love, unconditional, surrendered, expansive, became the greatest teacher of my life. And though the physical distance aches, the spiritual connection grows stronger every day. My journey has not been perfect. There were moments when I slipped into old patterns, moments when the loneliness pulled at me so strongly I considered abandoning the healing altogether. But each time, I felt you, your energy, your intuition, your silent encouragement. It was as if your soul knew when I needed strength. I would feel your presence in dreams, your whisper in my intuition, your warmth in moments of despair. You have no idea how many times the memory of your love pulled me out of darkness. Every breakthrough I've experienced has been fueled by the vision of the man I want to be when I stand beside you again. I've learned to sit with my emotions instead of suppressing them, to speak truth instead of hiding behind silence, to soften instead of harden. These may sound like small shifts, but they are monumental for a man who once carried his heart like a locked vault. You inspired these changes. You awakened the courage within me to transform. As I shed old layers, I began to see the bigger picture, the divine architecture behind our separation. The universe didn't pull us apart to punish us. It pulled us apart to preserve us. To preserve the purity of our connection, to protect us from premature union, to ensure that when we come together, it is from a place of alignment rather than chaos. What we share is not meant to be rushed, forced, or built on half-healed ground. It is meant to be sacred. And sacred things require preparation. I now understand that walking away was not the destruction of our story. It was the construction of a foundation deep enough to hold the magnitude of what we are destined to build. Every day I feel more certain that our paths are not diverging but spiraling toward each other at the pace our souls can handle. What once felt like loss now feels like divine orchestration. There is a version of me emerging now, a version I wish you could see. He is still imperfect, still human, still learning, but he is more present, more grounded, more emotionally honest, more spiritually attuned. He holds his heart with less fear, his truth with less hesitation, and his purpose with more clarity. This man is the one who can truly love you, honor you, protect your energy, and build a life with you that is not shaped by past wounds but by expanded consciousness. He is the man who understands the value of your heart and the responsibility that comes with being close to someone as spiritually powerful as you. He is the man who can stand beside your divine feminine without collapsing into insecurity or projecting his shadows. This man has existed within me all along, you just awakened him. And I'm learning to become him, day by day, breath by breath. I want you to understand something with absolute clarity. I did not walk away to abandon our connection. I walked away to protect its sacredness, to honor its potential, and to ensure that I would not bring you harm through my unhealed wounds. Everything I've done has been guided by a love that reaches beyond time and form. You may not have seen it, but I have been fighting for us, fighting through my shadows, fighting through my patterns, fighting through the parts of myself that once believed love like ours was impossible. I have been choosing you in every moment of my healing, choosing to become better for you, choosing to evolve for you. choosing to align with the version of our future that is truly worthy of your heart. And though my silence might make it seem like I've forgotten you, the opposite is true. You have been the guiding force behind every transformation I undergo. So here I stand now, at the edge of a new chapter in my awakening, finally understanding the purpose behind the hardest decision I've ever made, stepping away from the love I wanted most so that, one day, I could return as a man who can truly honor it. If destiny wills it, if divine timing aligns, if our souls choose reunion in this lifetime, I will come back to you not as a fragmented version of myself but as the fully awakened masculine you always saw within me. And if our paths cross again, I will hold your heart with the reverence it deserves, love you with the depth I once feared, and build with you the life we were always meant to co-create. Until then, know this, my absence was an act of devotion, my silence a form of protection, and my transformation a testament to the love I carry for you. I didn't step away because I didn't want you. I stepped away because I wanted us to succeed in the timeline where love is not a struggle, but a destiny fulfilled.